Hey, all you Arizona lovers. This is the Finding Arizona podcast, episode number 410. I'm your host, Jose. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's episode is with Colter, who is one of the founders behind Thrive Therapy. And I want to say thank you to Colter for coming in and just sharing his story. I have a bit of a connection to him, and you'll find out through the episode by watching. I'm very excited to share this episode because we are very big fans about mental health here and wanting to share the stories behind those who do it. I'm always ecstatic to learn from a professional, and also just to get my head right. I always like to learn a little bit more about who I am myself when it comes to my own mental health, and just kind of get some insights about that. But it's always kind of cool to get to meet the people who hear our problems and trying to understand how they go about life, how they've become business owners, and the struggles that they go through as well. So it's great. I really am ecstatic for some of the things that are coming down the road. If you've been keeping up with us through our social media, you know we're still at it. You know that we're going to really fantastic places and recording with really fantastic people. So keep in touch with us through social media, and that'll actually lead us into the business side of things going on with us, which is watching us and hearing us over at findingarizonapodcast.com. That's where you'll catch every episode and even more content available to you guys. We have a blog there. We also have a vlog if you want to stay with us, stay up to date with us through our family life. That is also available at youtube.com/findingarizonapodcast. And last but not least, if you would like to send us an email, that's findingarizonapodcast@gmail.com. Make it easy for you guys to connect with us. We have had some really great guests through that email, so keep sending the emails our way. We really want to hear more about what's going on in the Valley and events that you guys like to promote, or things that are upcoming that you want to share with the local community. And that's why we have this community corkboard that's coming up here. And I just want to share one thing with you guys, and it's very exclusive to this Valley area 602 Day. We are going to take part in this local event, sharing our pride about the community that we share here in the 602 area code. And there's a lot of things going on throughout the Valley that you'll get discounted prices on. But on top of that, there's an event going on over at Phoenix Beer Co., which is just right by the airport. And I hope you guys will come down and come share some priceless moments with us. We're going to be doing a live podcast with Taste of AZ podcast. We'll also be doing a lot of things with the community at large, where you can again get discounted prices. I would suggest going over to Art Museum, the zoo. There's I think a couple of other museums that you can go in and go and check it out and experience it on Sunday 6/2 for area code 602 Day, and it's official. I'm very excited because we get to share this moment with a lot of great individuals that we've done previous podcasts with, but also new people that we get to share their story on a very exclusive, monumental, big day. And I hope that you guys will continue to watch us and continue to join us at those events. But we will make sure that it is available for you to listen on two platforms, ours and Taste of AZ. So go check them out. Go click and subscribe to them as well. Eric and Luke do a wonderful job making that come to life, and we're very excited to share their stories. You guys already know we've met Eric. We've actually done a podcast with him multiple times on different events and a personal one as well. He was on our 400th episode, so go check that out as well. Just again, a lot of things going down for the event, but I hope you guys will at least go and participate at 602 Day on 6/2, and we will see you guys there. And that'll conclude our community corkboard. Always send us some more information at our email, and I will check you guys on the next episode for 611. But right now, let's get into it. Thrive Therapy, episode 410. I will see you next time. Score big with SeatGeek. Whether it's concerts, sports, or live events, SeatGeek has you covered. Use code FindingArizona to get a fantastic $20 discount on your SeatGeek tickets. Catch your favorite live events hassle-free with extra savings. Visit SeatGeek.com and make every experience unforgettable. Welcome back, everybody, to the Finding Arizona podcast. I'm your host, Jose, and as always, we bring in fantastic guests every week. Today is no different. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to Colter.
And he's going to be talking to us about Thrive Therapy and just a little bit about what he's got going on new and everything in between. So welcome, Colter. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we were talking a little bit off air, and you're coming back into the Valley, kind of re-education of stuff, and learning about the place that you left, and now like really kind of wanting to dive back in. And we'll get into that, but I'll ask you this question that we usually ask everyone, and which is, give us a little bit of your origin story and how therapy came into your world, and things like that, of like how the origin story of this all.
Yeah, like how I got into this. So I always was interested in psychology. I remember I took a psychology class at U of A, and I loved it, but there was like no examples in my family of someone that was in a field like that. And so I never really considered it an option. And then as I got a little bit older, I kind of always had this idea in my head that maybe I wanted to be a therapist, but I think as like a 25-year-old guy, it felt kind of weird to say that, that I want to be a therapist. And I ended up making some friends who were therapists, and I just found myself like so just entrenched in those conversations, like loving everything they were talking about, and eventually decided I wanted to pursue that myself. And I think the real draw to it for me is like, I was always the person, like I'd go to a party and I end up talking to one person in the corner for 3 hours, and it's like, and they're like, how are you? And I'm like, I want to get deep right now.
let's dive deep.
Yeah. It's like, no, cut the BS. And so I really just, it felt like the right thing for me. And most therapists I know, like if they weren't therapists, they would be like in a different helping profession. Like they'd be a nurse or a social worker or something.
Yeah.
I feel like I would be like a scientist or something. Like I love figuring things out, and then I'm super extroverted. So like I love helping people figure themselves out. That's probably the better way to say it than like figuring people out. Kind of like, I don't know what makes you
exactly.
So that's what it was for me.
Wow. So it's like you had no prior anybody in your history of like family that have been interested in therapy. So you're just coming out from a pure place of curiosity, which is kind of neat. Like the fact that you kind of went this other route than the rest of your family. What were most of them, if you can kind of give us a little bit of history on that?
Well, so my family was all in like mortgage business. That was, everyone we knew was in kind of like that realm. And I should say, like, my parents are super supportive. They actually wanted me to be an actor.
Oh, wow.
So it's not like they're the type of like, you need to get into the family business or something. Like, they were very supportive. And so I take full ownership. Like, I just never really vocalized it. Like, I just didn't really think it was like an option or anything.
And it's really funny though, because it's like, so just to give everyone a little bit of background about what's going on here, actually Colter knows my father and has worked with him previously. And so actually Colter, when you found out that I had, like, he was my dad.
Yeah.
I want to ask this, like, because it's always funny because when people meet my dad and then they meet me, personalities are sort of similar, but he's way more, like, he's got way more extrovert energy than I do. And that comes from the fact that my mom is a little bit more introverted.
Okay.
And so I kind of,
calmer.
Yeah, I'm a little calmer and just more kind of picking up the world like you, where I have a curiosity and I kind of want to understand it on a broader scale. So it's just, I was wondering if like, that family dynamic of like, you see yourself that much different than your family, or do you also kind of see where you pick up those generational counterparts? Yeah.
I want to warn you, you gotta be careful talking about family of origin to a therapist.
Okay.
I might start pulling things out of you.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine.
I'm just kidding. I'm a lot like my dad.
Okay.
My dad, as I'm sure we'll get into. So now, I own a therapy practice that employs 16 different therapists. My dad started a mortgage company probably, 25 years ago that did really well. He had 1,200 employees eventually. And so I think we're very similar. He's super relational, super extroverted, a great manager of people. And so I have had, a decent amount of success with Thrive thus far. And like one of the biggest things I attribute that to is my dad and his coaching and mentorship on how to treat people and how to treat people well and manage people well. So I feel like there's a lot of overlap there. And I mean, we talk maybe not as much as we used to. I mean, when I was really in the throes of like building the business, I was probably talking to him like 2 or 3 times a week about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that kind of generally happens, especially when you kind of see that moment of like, I need help from you from this very particular spot. And I'll give you this, being a homeowner and him doing what he does. I like constantly talk about, I mean, he helped me change the water heater just a few months ago. And just like my wife and I have talked about, it's like, he could be his own show, and we want to slowly really want to help him create that YouTube channel for him. But I also know his personality of being like, he's just unhinged to a point where it's
that's
like,
what you want, though.
Yeah. I was like, I go back and forth about it, because it's like, I have worked with him before and different scales. So before he had the business that he has now, he was like a food cart, hot dog man. And then he moved into a food truck, and I helped him with that food truck. And so it's like, I have worked with him before. That's
so funny, because I've always thought that like the 2 people you want in your family, if you could choose 2 professions, are chef and contractor. Like, you want the person who you can call up and be like, my sink is broken. They're like, I'll fix it. And then you want the person that invites you to dinner and they just make like a really good meal. And so it's like, those are the 2 things that you would want.
He's got both of those hats and those different mentality. Like, I don't know what it is about it. It's like, as soon as he picks it up, or as soon as he does it more than once, he just kind of like slowly the wheels start turning, and he wants to do it again in a different way, or a different, like, he picks up the different steps that'll make it easier. So he's very much that type of like, I will get it and I will perfect it little bit by little bit. And so he's definitely that kind of guy. I would love to understand, what was the antithesis or the thing that helped you say, I'm going to start Thrive?
So I actually didn't start Thrive.
Okay.
Quick kind of backstory on that is that Thrive was started by another therapist named Sam. He's the one that hired me at Thrive.
Okay.
Probably the best therapist I've ever met. And I remember when I interviewed with him, I was kind of hemming and hawing about, I feel like I could do some other things within therapy, and I have some other skills. And he stopped me and he goes, you have an idea. I want to hear it. And I said, I would love to maybe like start my own location someday. And he said, I said, maybe a few years down the road. And he goes, that'll be way sooner than a few years from now. And 6 months later, we opened up this new location.
Oh, wow.
And so
cool.
It was kind of this slow merger until eventually it kind of became like my thing. And we had a couple of locations, and just because of like location in the valley and stuff, one was on the West Valley. That's where he lived. It was kind of like, okay, he's going to take this one and I'm going to take this one, and we're both going to kind of run with them. And so it almost kind of like a backing into it in some way. Like, I knew I always wanted to, manage something and hire some people. And I really fell in love with that piece of it. And then, when I'll just be honest, when 2020 happened, mental health got really bad for people, and it just caused a massive, influx of people calling in for therapy. And so it kind of forced us to grow. It was just like, I got to hire someone. And I couldn't really hire people fast enough. Like I felt like I would hire new therapists, and then 3 weeks later I'd have the same problem, which is like, I couldn't fit enough people in.
That's something that I also kind of picked out from our previous conversations with other businesses, that if you were someone during that time that really pivoted to looking almost inward, like kind of understanding what you brought to the table, and really wanted to pursue that in a very different and creative manner of like, I am good at this and I need to help the community at large with this kind of talent or this kind of service or this kind of thing. And, they really learned to perfect that. But also the fact that they were looking inward and saying to themselves, like, how do I stay afloat and keep this business alive.
Yeah, that's an interesting common denominator. I'm sure you've had so many conversations that you can kind of like differentiate who's been able to do that and who hasn't.
Yeah, and it's definitely kind of the thing that stood out from every conversation that I've had, like that inward looking. And so one of the other factors was, again, mental health and just that level of like no idea what to do, no idea where to go, and having these kind of breakdowns of mental, need and help. And so I can kind of attest to that as well, because we were pregnant. Well, she was pregnant and I was like kind of like
in 2020.
Yeah.
We were pregnant too at that time.
Yeah. So it was just one of those situations where it's like, what are we going to do? Like, we're at this pivotal point of like, I don't even know. 'Cause she was like, well, we're going to have this baby. One of us has to stay home. And like, we kind of settled on this, like, we don't want someone else to raise our child. So, kind of this caretaker, thing wasn't up.
That wasn't an option.
That wasn't an option for us.
Yeah.
And my brother, at the time was, living with my family, and it just was like, they were having a child as well. And so there was like a little bit, couple months after we announced ours, and we were like, man, my parents are going to be busy. So it's like, they will have priority of my brother, and we're kind of like independent here. And it was one of those situations like, what are we going to do? How are we going to pull this off? And I kind of, had to make a decision of like, am I going to stick with where I'm at in my job career, or I'm going to have to pivot and try something else? And so that's what I did. It was like, I really was like, I'm going to have to, where I was at, I was like, I'm going to have to let this go and kind of really try for something at home.
Yeah.
And really try and make this work at home.
Okay.
In some sort of fashion. So it took me long enough, but we, I finally found a place that I'm happy with, that I like doing what I do. And we had our little guy, and it's every moment with him though, because he's our first. And I was like, this is hard, but it's also the most creative, like most rewarding in the sense of like everything, like in every part of fatherhood, parenthood, challenge wise. It was just like another like successful thing that I felt proud about, because he's growing, he's thriving now. And it's just like, wow, wasn't like, I felt proud mentally, and I still do, about this. Like I had a child during this very hard pivotal moment in every aspect of life, like, job, career, the actual physical world out there. And it's made me feel like I'm a stronger person going from it, like doing it. And so it's like really great to have that moment with not only my son, my family, but also my own mental.
With yourself.
Yeah, with my own mental. Yeah.
I love that compassionate view towards yourself, and the ability to look at something and say, that was really hard and I did it. And I feel good about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
For you, during that period of like transformation, I imagine there was also just like a moment of like crisis of like having to this business and your family as well.
Yeah, it was hard. I definitely kind of found my limit.
Yeah.
Which, I did that in a way of kind of like, almost running into a brick wall or something.
Yeah.
The way my therapist put it was, it's kind of like the breaker on the house that like, if you it can only handle so much power, and you keep plugging things in, and eventually the lights start flickering.
Yeah.
And if you don't listen, eventually it just goes like it just shuts off the power.
Yeah.
And that kind of happened for me, just really reaching this point where I'm like, this is not sustainable anymore. And I feel like since then I've learned how to like listen to the cues from my body. Like I've learned how to notice when the lights are flickering.
Yeah.
And a lot of people show up for therapy because they haven't listened to the cues that their body is giving them. So I unfortunately found the limit.
And that's sometimes the kind of crux of going into asking for help is like you run to the end of where you can't run anymore, and you got to pull yourself out, and you turn to these kinds of elements. And I'm kind of curious too, because you did bring up like you go to therapy yourself. Mm-hmm. So it's like I've heard of therapists having their own therapists. Yeah. And is that common, or is that something that just...
I think it's pretty common. I feel like most of the therapists that work for me are like, we're pretty vocal about it with each other. Just,
okay. Yeah.
I don't know, life gets hard and, different things come up. And so it's really helpful to have kind of like your own space for it. What's funny is like my therapist said to me, he was like, oh yeah, it's kind of like, I've been at that spot before, and, I have to go see my therapist. Yeah. And I'm like, I wonder who that guy sees. I was like,
it's like a rotating.
I was like, dang, that guy must be really good.
I always like, cause in like you say, the helping others department, where it's like all of these people who help other people, like have a person that they get help from. Yeah. And it's always kind of a curious thing of like this never ending rope of like people helping people. And I love that.
Yeah.
So you have this business, you're working through it, and you're kind of getting along through 2020. Mm-hmm. Where was that moment of like, cause I don't know if there was a moment where I was like, oh, okay, I'm thriving, and kind of the walls come down and doing well and stuff like that. Where was that moment for like an exhale after
for me? I think that was sometime maybe in early 2022 where we kind of hit like a little bit more of a cruising altitude. We made some changes. One of the biggest changes that we did, which I love to talk about this some, is we started offering a lot of group therapy options.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And so again, we just like couldn't keep up with the demand for therapy. At one point, there was 1 week where we had 100 people reach out for therapy.
Wow.
Yeah. 1 week that happened, and it was just like, it was crazy. We've since mellowed out to around more like, we're at like 25 a week now. Okay. That seems to be kind of a good number for us. But we started offering all these groups and the reason for that is like, okay, well now rather than getting one person in at a time, we get 8 or 10 people in at a time. And group therapy, I preach about this so often. So when I was in grad school, I had to go to group therapy as part of my groups class. Like they make you go try it out yourself. And I loved it. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing anyone can ever do in therapy. And no one's ever going to do it because it's so scary to go. Like, it's already scary to come to therapy. That's like, hey, you're going to come talk about all like the painful things.
Yeah.
And this, person you don't know is going to be there witnessing that. But what if I said, also, I'm going to invite 7 other people into the room, and they're not trained professionals. They're just other humans.
Common,
But there's research showing that group therapy can be more beneficial than individual therapy. We took a poll at Thrive, and 73% of people said that group therapy was as effective or more effective than going to individual therapy.
Wow.
And then the thing I always say is that we don't need a poll to tell you that it's a third of the cost. So it's a lot cheaper too.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. That's like, to me, it's like, it's weird to say that, yes, you're going to go to a group meeting and you're going to talk about all the hardships that you've gone through.
Yeah.
But you're also going to gain perspective.
Yeah.
In that really common way of like, you're going to hear someone else share a little bit of their pain as well.
Well, I think we all have things that we keep in the dark, and we think, if I let people see this about me, it's going to create disconnection.
Yeah.
Like if people know this about me, they know the secret or this thing that happened to me or whatever, it's going to create disconnection. Mm-hmm. And so I need to keep that at bay. Well, the job of the therapist is to help those things come to light. And that's why people often feel connected to their therapist. Now let's go back to like the group scenario. You bring out this really painful thing. And then what we do is we ask other people in the room, like, hey, like, guys, what was it like to hear Jose talk about that? Mm-hmm. What was it like to hear Jose bring all of that up? It might be about a time that like you like did something hurtful to somebody.
Yeah.
or something hurtful happened to you that you feel ashamed of. And 9 times out of 10 you hear people say, oh wow, I just really felt for you in that moment. I can relate, like I've been there before, or it just feels good to like get to know you better. And so then we get to ask this question back to you. We say, hey, Jose, did you think that when you brought this up, it was going to create connection or disconnection with people? And I thought it was going to create disconnection. Like, well, what was it like to see that it actually made people feel more connected to you? And that is literally how we start transforming shame, is bringing out vulnerability and connecting with other people. So don't get me wrong, it's a terrifying process to do. Like I just started telling people, I'm like, you probably think group therapy sounds kind of scary. And that's because it is. Yeah. Like it is very scary.
So you brought up the kind of mentioning of like wanting to talk about some of the different services that you guys provide. So let's get into that part of it and just kind of like, I mean, in my conversation with you, you wanted to also talk about like some of the things that you're doing differently than most therapies. Yeah,
I feel like we are. I know that's kind of like a cool thing to say. Like we're different. Our therapists cuss. I don't know.
No, I totally. I was like, what's different? I want to know.
Yeah. So I do feel like we do things differently. For one, the amount of groups that we offer is. I don't think there's other practices in the Valley that have that amount of groups. We have like 11 different groups that we do, ranging from like trauma to OCD to anxiety to relationships to emotions. But the other thing that we have going on is we have this free membership to our on our website, and it just has like different video courses on there.
Okay.
And so,
nice.
One of the video courses I did was on like how to construct your top 10 values. And I really see this as like your kind of proactive mental health plan.
Got it.
And so the people that really get like the most out of our services are people that really kind of plug into the community at Thrive, and do more than just see a therapist once a week. And I'm not saying they need to like be at our office 3 times a week or something. It's maybe someone who sees their therapist once every couple weeks and then goes to a group and then maybe takes some time off and does like some of our courses at home.
Yeah.
That's who is really, I think, is like getting the most out of what we have to offer. And then, we see this so often as well, where someone comes into therapy and they have a good experience with it. And they're like, hey, how do I get my husband here? Like I was going to say, how do I get my wife? Because I'm a man married to a woman, but usually it's a woman saying like, how do I get my husband here?
Yeah. Totally,
And so the therapist has to say, well, we'll, set him up with one of the guys or something.
Yeah.
And then, and then maybe they do some couples work with us. So I really feel like we are kind of like a one-stop shop. Like we can kind of do whatever you've got.
Yeah. Like, you come to them and you're kind of like, look, if you need this, we offer this and that sort of thing. So I love that, because I'll be honest, like between Britt and I think we do really well with communicating with each other.
Yeah.
But there's always those moments where it's like, an emotional aspect, like you want to do better. Like you want more connection, you want more understanding, and you want to try and make sure, you're both on the same page and things like that. And just like, that's something that we try our best, but it's like, we're not experts. We don't.
Yeah. I got the thing for you.
Oh, awesome. There you go. There you go. And the other thing too is, I think one of the best things that I think really worked for both of us, or at least that we both enjoy on different scales, was Brene Brown.
Oh yeah.
And just, you'll see she's, I think it's somewhere up here on this sort of this side of the wall is her book, the Atlas.
Atlas of the Heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually did a book club on that book.
Nice.
That book is really great. So that's kind of, some of where I was going is like, we have these other options for people that not everything needs to be like this, like deep, intense therapy. Like we have one group that I kind of feel like everyone should go through. It's called The Gift of Emotions. No. That's the video course. The video course called The Gift of Emotions. You should do that too. But we have this group called Emotions 101. The Gift of Emotions course, though, I edited all the video from it. Don't you guys know how to edit videos, so don't watch it. I'm not that good.
We always give him a fair amount of like
I need a lot of grace.
Grace with that kind of stuff.
But anyways, like I'm a therapist. I feel like I have a, let's just say like a slightly above average like working knowledge of emotions. I learned so much from listening to this course on like what each emotion is trying to tell you. I think my favorite thing that I learned from it is the gift that anger brings you. Actually, no, I'm going to say guilt. The gift that guilt brings you is it lets you know that you have transgressed one of your own values, but it invites you into a values check to see which value you protected.
Yes.
And I've noticed that like, for myself, if I start feeling guilty about something, like, oh my gosh, I feel so guilty. It's like, okay, what value did I cross? Like, and then it directs you to, what do you need to do? Does that mean I need to make amends to somebody? Does that mean I need to give compassion to myself? Because not all values are equally available to us. And so stuff like that, it's like, this is just going to make you a better human.
Yeah,
like, you're just going to be a better like dad or husband or, wife, mom, daughter, whatever. Like, you're just going to be a better person. And so the couples thing we do, we have this workshop called Hold Me Tight that a gal named Kayla runs. She's amazing. And it's for like, there's couples who come to it where they're like, our relationship's at a 3 and we want it to be higher than that. And then there's couples who come that they're like, we're at an 8 or 9, but like, we want to be at a 10. Like, who can't benefit from having some more tools to know how to talk to each other? Like, marriage is hard.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely like one of those things where it's like, you feel like you're doing all the right things. And definitely we're people who like do those checks every now and again where it's like, we feel this way, but it's like we could always benefit from more. And that's definitely something that I've kind of brought up where it's like, well, maybe it's seeking out help from others or like therapy and things like that. Because again, it's like I could be on the same page, but it's like I'm not the expert. Like I don't ever consider myself an expert in pretty much anything, but it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I always say it's like, but I know where we can find it. Like I know.
It's also just really hard to like evaluate yourself. And it's almost like giving yourself that feedback. I even just think of like working out or something, being at the gym. It's like, I can't see what my body is doing while I'm doing it necessarily. Like if you're laying down on a bench, you might have to have someone point out to you like, hey, do you see what you're like, that you're dipping your shoulder there? And you're like, no, I had no idea I was doing that. And so, I mean, like my wife and I,
that's a beautiful way of putting it for me, at least.
That resonates with men. Yeah. That's like what I always say. They're like, I don't want to be here. And I'm like, let's think of it this way. But my wife and I, we see a couples therapist from time to time because guess who really doesn't want me to be their therapist is my wife.
Stop self-analyzing.
Well, and by the way, I'm like, it's not, I have my own things that I contribute to the relationship that make it difficult. And so, I
just, again, it's like very helpful for these conversations. I love is just getting to know the individual behind the business. And so I love that you've been able to contribute what you find great about what you do and also kind of the difficulties that it brings to your life. And as well, any entrepreneur has those kind of ups and downs. And I think it's great though, because of all people, you have the tools to like, okay, well, to self-correct, this is where we need to go or where I need to look at. And also I have the benefit of looking and asking my own parental, who's been through this workload and things like that I can also seek help from. So it's just really great that we were getting to know each other on that level. And one of the other things is, again, bringing up conflict and just kind of issues, and that comes with your daily routine. And this is something that I really like to get with the entrepreneurs is what are some of those non-negotiables for you?
Like that I have to do on my daily routine. Is this where I talk about cold plunges?
Oh, sure. If you want to. We've talked about this. We're going back and forth of like, sauna, cold plunges, and looking those up and wanting to do those.
Do you know how you can tell if someone cold plunges?
No.
They'll tell you.
Oh, God. I've done it a few times, and I love it. I love the feeling of it.
I do too. Well, I hate the feeling, but then afterwards, you're like, oh, my gosh, like I feel like lightning just went through my body.
Exactly.
Like, so I think for me, I kind of mentioned it before, like really learning how to take care of my body. And listen to the cues that my body is giving me. We're also in a season where we have an 8-week-old baby.
Oh,
yeah. And
boy, girl.
So we have 3.5-year-old boy, 8-week-old baby. And so we are in a survival season. Like we're just trying to survive.
Any time available, you're just like, oh, I just need to breathe. Like,
yeah, I know this. Yeah. So, we're in that kind of season right now. And I think it's for me, it's like, I understand what I can say yes to and what I say no to. And I have my self-care items, and I have, my top 10 values that I've defined and consistently check in with, like, am I living a life like this? And, making,
do you know them off the top of your head?
I might be able to get them.
I was going to say, can you give me 1, 5, and 10?
Well, I don't have them in order. I can give you a couple though.
Sure.
So I'll give you a few of mine that made the list this year. So, craftsmanship, I'll just say family. That's like kind of one that makes everybody's list. And then earth are 3 of my values that made the list for me. And what those mean to me is craftsmanship is, like actually working on things with my hands, like trying to build things for my own, like being out in my garden, making pour over coffee in the morning, like taking that kind of attitude to life, not just like having crap in our house. It's just throwaway stuff, you know? 2 is family, is like, knowing who's important to me and making time for them. And I think that can mean more than just like the people that I'm blood related to, but who's our family. Like we have these couple friends, Troy and Kylie, and we always call them family dinners, but none of us are actually family. And then earth, was one of the ones that made my list this year that wasn't on the list last year. And it's not as much of like conservation of the earth or something, but more just like this continual recognition. Like, I'm here, I am now, coming back to the present moment, like being as involved in my life as I can be. And that idea to people might sound maybe kind of silly or kind of like it doesn't need to be said, like being involved in your own life. But there's a lot of messaging out there on how to get uninvolved from your life that kind of is like, hey, if you buy this thing, then you don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And like, if you have enough money, like you don't have to make your own food. You don't have to like do your own laundry. Like everything can kind of be outsourced to you. And I feel like I made this decision a few years ago because I recognized I was chasing a lot of that. Like, how can I have as few responsibilities as possible so I can just like live my best life?
Yeah.
And that led to a lot of depression for me. And so I've had to make this really conscious effort to say, when I'm doing the dishes, when I'm making a protein shake, when I'm making coffee, when I'm putting shoes on my son, like this is my life.
Yeah.
Like I need to stop trying to like escape these moments. Like this is my life. And then I can kind of conversely look at that, like what's taking me out of my life, which I think of like social media, like that doesn't feel like my real life to me. Yeah. Like if I'm like scrolling through my phone, like I want to be as involved here and now as possible.
I had a moment like that where, and I think a lot of parents have this, is the moment that your young one starts moving into different shoe sizes.
Okay.
And like they go from that little tiny shoe to to their next level up. And that hit me pretty hard. Well, not hard, but like it really made me recognize, okay, he's not stopping in his growth. Like he's not slowing down. He's not slowing down.
Yeah, you look at him one day and you're like, oh, you're a kid now.
Yeah.
Like when did you become a kid?
Yeah. You went from like literally, like I tell her this all the time, like he fit right here.
Yeah.
Like, and now I have to like pick him up and like put some effort into holding him and things like that.
It's very slow and all at once.
Yes. And it's incredible though, because again, it's like those moments where I'm like, oh, this is so like, I don't want to do this, or I don't, and then that realization of like, but you're missing, like if you don't pay attention, you're gonna miss it.
Yeah. And
that's kind of like what hit, like those singular moments of like, oh man, okay, I'm gonna take this in and enjoy it. Take putting on his shoes. And one of the other things is, and this morning he likes to make coffee with us. And
does he?
Yeah,
My son loves that too.
Yeah, he loves making coffee with us. So I love like doing that moment with him. And it sucks too, because it's like there are things that he doesn't like, and you're just like, oh, I wish you
wanted to do this.
Wish you wanted to do this more.
Yeah, I will have to show you a picture after this of my son brought me into his room the other day, and he had gotten all of my stuff to make a pour over coffee. Like he had like the V60, the kettle, the filter.
How old is he?
He's 3.5.
Oh yeah.
And he goes, Dad, I'm making coffee for you. And just like that, like hipster part of me was just like, it's my boy.
Yeah,
it's my boy. Exactly. He's knowing how to drink good coffee at an early age.
Yeah, with us, like, so I said he doesn't like doing certain things, so we tried to clip his nails, his fingernails. He didn't. He like had a fit, crying, like he threw himself on the ground and stuff like that. And we were like, it's one finger, and it's like that moment was rough. But then she drops him off at school, and then she comes and tells me later today, and he's like, oh, he was like saying how proud he was for doing it. I was like, he didn't even do it. Like, he was like so proud of himself. He's like, I trimmed my nail, mama. Like, and then she's like,
you didn't actually.
But but it's like that, those types of things where it's like he sees it a different way, and then he'll be fine just like moments later, and he has that joy in life and things like that. So I think Parenthood has really made a big effect on my mental health, both good and bad. Like moments like where you take it in and you're just like, like, yes, this is great, I'm doing certain things right, I really enjoy having him. And then those difficult moments where you're just like, it's a struggle, but it's definitely a struggle that I wouldn't change for the world, because I have him. Okay, we move on now to our kind of ending conversation, which is about goals, and just kind of like some of those goals you may not be able to because of HIPAA law and like all these things, but I'd love to understand something from the business aspect of just thrive and achievement of certain milestones or something like that for yourself.
I think one of my biggest goals right now for us is to just expand free mental health resources to people. Like we're really at this cruising altitude when it comes to individual therapy, even kind of in group therapy. And so if I can get some more of these tools into people's hands, and then we also started a podcast recently.
Nice.
And so that's been really fun, and another way to get like free resources. It's called Relatable with Thrive Therapy, and it's like mostly about relationships. And then we kind of sprinkle in some stuff about mental health as well. So I think those are our two goals, is really kind of like growing all of that stuff and teaching people to see your mental health not as like, well, I've heard people almost talk about it like either they have mental health or they don't. Like everybody has mental health. Absolutely. That would be like saying like, I don't have physical health. It's like your physical health might be great, or it might be doing poorly. And just because it's doing poorly doesn't mean it's doing poorly for forever. It waxes and wanes and goes up and down. And so teaching people to just have a proactive stance about your mental health, like it's going to dip and then it's going to go up. And if you have a robust set of tools for it, it doesn't need to go like this. It can go like this, which for the people listening, is talking about, like, it doesn't need to go up and down so much. It can mellow out a little bit more.
I always felt like, and especially as a younger 20-something-year-old, it's like, I'm good. Like, I don't need any, like, I'm like thriving. Like I'm okay up here. I'm okay physically. And like, it was like after graduation, it's like when it starts to really like, because
it's a hard time for people.
Absolutely. And so
big transition.
I think that's where it's like that first inkling of like, something's not right.
Yeah.
With not only my physical, but my mental as well.
Yeah. You just needed more tools, which like, you know, we talked about our connection is your dad, being a contractor. And so, you know, it's like you have certain jobs you can get done with a small set of tools, but if you want to expand the job, you need more tools. And sometimes you try a new one and it's easy for you to use. Like you don't really need someone to show you. And then other times you're like, I can't figure this out for the life of me. And you know, that's where we step in.
Yeah. And that's where you call for help. Yeah. My dad is always there. Yeah. So again, it's like our kind of finalized conversations, like goals and stuff like that, and kind of any kind of, I guess I would really like to ask you in particular, and this is kind of a new situation, it's just kind of like how you kind of like, I don't know, keep your approach of your business at a way of not arm's length away, because there's no way you could do that and still kind of deal with like, you know, you're taking in a lot. You're taking in a lot of data. You're taking in a lot of emotional inputs. Yeah. And how you keep that professionally balanced away from, let's say, your family life. Yeah.
I have a ritual I do at the end of most days. I shouldn't say every day because I don't do it. There's two things I do. One is I have this app called Brick on my phone that like it pretty much mutes all of the distracting apps. So I like scan it. There's a physical device that you actually have to scan in order to turn it on. So I have that at my office. I scan it when I'm walking out. And I also take my work bag, and it has like a few clasps to it, like put my computer in it, close it up, do the buckles. And that's kind of like a symbol for me to be like, I am done with work for the day. Nice. We started having people do stuff like that, especially when they were doing work from home with COVID, that there was like no commute home to kind of decompress. And so we'd tell people, pick a little ritual, just like walk outside and touch a tree, go touch that same tree every day, to just be like, go tag it. I'm done with work for the day. I'm going to come back home, come back inside, and I'm going to re-enter as kind of like a different person. And so I have those rituals for myself. And then also the ability to know like when it's been a hard day, and like there's been days that stuff happened at work that was just really hard. Like sometimes it's, you know, business related, and then other times it's like therapy related that, you know, we have clients in really difficult places, and there's days where I need to come home and just tell my wife, today was a really hard day. You know, that maybe is once every 4 months or so. And I'm like, I'm at lower capacity today. You know?
I really do appreciate that, because the kind of things where you're talking about where like the rituals mean a lot, as far as from someone who works from home, especially. Yeah. And the one thing that I kind of want to relate it to is like, I don't know if you've ever, like, any sports kind of person has a ritual that they typically do. Like even
like at the free throw line or something.
It's a free throw line. You can like, even going out into the court, some guys tap the door as they leave, like tap a little saying as they leave or something like that, way they tie their shoes and stuff like that. So just for the listeners out there kind of wanting to, I don't get that. Like
we crave that. We crave rhythm.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Really appreciate you coming in. I really appreciate what you're about. And I know that you being back here in the Valley is going to make a lot of people's lives a lot better. And the things that you do with Thrive, really have a high hopes for you guys, and know that you're going to do some great things. Before you go, I allow everyone to take the reins and just promote yourself. Social media, phone number, physical address, whatever you want to do, the floor is yours.
Cool. So thrivetherapyphx.com is our website. We have different membership options on there. Well, they're free, different video courses. We have a podcast, Relatable, with Thrive Therapy. And then, we're here in the Valley up at Tatum and Shea. So,
are you the host of the podcast?
I am with 2 other gals who are much smarter than me. I always say I'm just the personality hire of the podcast. But yeah, so I'm on there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And before we go, we leave you guys with always finding us at findingarizonapodcast.com. Social media wise, Finding Arizona Podcast under everything. Last but not least, and every conversation with a kisses, hugs, and belly rubs to our 4-legged friends. And we will see you next time. Bye, y'all.